What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about WSUS and PowerShell scripting. So I've been getting into PowerShell scripting heavily lately, like really trying to have it become my Swiss Army knife. So every situation that I run into that I can solve with PowerShell scripting, I'm trying to do it. So today we're going to talk about WSUS server. So for those of you guys that don't know, WSUS is basically Windows server update services. Basically what it is, it allows you to have this central location on your work when you can use that to distribute or control the updates that gets pushed down to different computers on your network. So you can set up a group policy that tells each computer, and that group policy is applied to say, hey, look to the server for your updates instead of looking to Microsoft, and then on that server, which is the WSUS server, you can control what updates get pushed down to those computers, right? So I'm supposed to try to configure it in the environment that I'm working on, but I ran into some issue where WSUS was not indexing some of the computers. So today we're going to talk about a PowerShell script that I wrote to kind of help me solve that issue when WSUS is not indexing the things that needs to get indexed. So you guys are going to see me go through the process of writing the script, and then after that we're going to talk about the script in detail. As I said, I'm somewhat new to PowerShell scripting, not PowerShell as a whole, but PowerShell scripting, I'm really starting to dive into it to become really good at it. I want it to be my go-to for everything. So when you look at this, know that there are ways for you to get better. Know that there are ways that you can do the things that I'm doing here, and it's much more proficient and much more better. But I have that shiny object syndrome right now where I'm trying to try everything until I become really good at it. And the idea here is to put this on here, but also to put it on my website so I can reflect back on this thing and say like, oh, that was a horrible scripting, that was good scripting, I can make that better, I can do that. And also I wanted to kind of give you guys that real life situation, right? Where it's not just about like, oh, look at this, I'm doing this, but it's kind of like real life to see that I run into an issue, which is kind of like a legit issue, and I created a script to kind of solve that issue. So that's what this video is going to be about. Sorry for the long rant. So let's roll the intro clip, and you guys are going to see me kind of going through the process of developing that script. And then after that, we're going to talk about the script. So let's roll the intro clip. When we come back, we're going to talk all about it. Okay, so before we get into you guys getting to see me work on the script and trying to make it work and then looking at the end result, I want to give credit to this blog right here. This guy spent time to kind of figure out the PowerShell script that he needs to run to queue up the Windows update on the client side of things, and then running the WSUS command to force that same client to re-register to WSUS. That was very important. That's kind of like one part of the script itself that I'm working on. If you're working on just one computer, you might just need to look at his blog and then try to make it work for you. But as I said, I was working with different computers, so I had to figure out how to get through all of the other stuff and then make that work for me. So after doing a whole bunch of research, his blog was the most helpful. I want to give him full credit for it. So make sure you check him out. Read his blog. It's a pretty short read. Read it. Very helpful. Link is in the description box below. With that being said, let's go ahead. Let's get scripting.
Silhouettes of you are like a taunt. Never really know just what you want. With you I don't ever feel calm. I can feel the sweat inside my palms. Play with me like cats and a string. You don't understand the pain it brings. You don't ever wanna give me wings. You don't ever wanna set me free. You know I'm addicted to you, and it's twisted, you've been gifted with the evil voodoo. Got me coming back for more, even when I've been screwed. Dolls full of pins, pierce my heart straight through. I got issues in my head, I like you in my bed, but you keep me on red. Oh, everything is like a test, I better not text or I'll come off desperate.
But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, baby you'll get sick of being the monster out of my head, under my bed, thinking something
so this is the finished product here. We're going to talk about the script in detail to try to see what I try to do for each and every one. And of course, this can be way better. Of course, the whole idea here is for me to write this script and be able to look back at them and be like, oh, that's horrible. I'm just looking back on it now. I'm like, oh man, I can make that better. I can make that better. And that's great. I'm not going to change it automatically. And that's the whole idea of progress, right? Because right after you're done, you're like, oh, I've learned this new thing and I can make it better. And for people that are way better than scripting, you're probably looking at this and be like, oh, you can make this better. You can add that to it. And this is why I'm going to put it on the website. On my website, you're welcome to go there. I'm going to open up the comment box. And then you guys can add to it and try to make it better for those of you guys that are way more experienced in PowerShell scripting. It will help myself and other people as well to try to make the script better, or in general to try to learn more stuff. But then again, everything, but the most important part is that everything that you see here, of course, take it with a grain of salt. Do your own due diligence first before you run something like this on your environment. This is something that I wrote and something that's specific to my environment. And I've made it in a way that it can be used in different environments to a certain degree. There might be some changes that you might need to apply, but you can run it in different environments as needed. And I'm going to be running it in different domains, so that's why I made it the way that I made it too, and it should be easier for you guys as well. So let's get started. So here's just the basic information, version, name of the script, and all that stuff. The second line here, basically what this is doing is that it requires the script to be run as administrator. So when you run PowerShell, you need to run PowerShell as administrator to be able to run the script. If you do not, the script will not run. And I did this because you're going to be deleting registry key, and if you're running it in standard mode instead of running it as administrator, PowerShell doesn't let you delete registry key. So that's why I add this part right here, and that's important because again, if you don't run it as administrator, it's required, it's not going to run. For the next part here, as I said, I'm going to be running this in different domain. So also for those of you guys that are going to be using it, I figured I should not hard code that in. It's not like one domain that I'm going to be using to run it. Sometimes you might have something where different domain has its own WSUS server. So basically what I'm doing here, I'm right into the prompt saying that enter the name of your domain without the TLD, and that's getting stored in domain info. Basically, if your domain name is, let's say, koromatech.com, enter koromatech, right? So just enter the domain name, not TLD, not the .com, not the .com or anything like that. Just enter koromatech, and this is going to come and play in a couple of lines down the script here. And of course, now enter the TLD. The TLD is of course .com, so you don't enter the dot, you just enter the com. So it's just like koromatech.com. So you just enter koromatech for the domain information, and then the com for the TLD. I ran the script to someone that's way better than scripting than I am, and you're going to see some of the input that he kind of suggested, some of the things that he suggested I did as we go along. And one of them is this guy right here, and most of it is this guy actually right here. He's saying that if you're going to ask for user input, make sure you have some sort of validation to make sure that the user is entering this what he or she is supposed to enter, and if they don't enter it, the script don't go forward, right? That's very good. I'm actually going to try to do that. I'm going to put this up on the website. I am going to try to do that, and you guys, for any of you guys that use that script, you should try to do that as well. Here we're asking for the specific we're asking for the users to specify what WSUS server they want to use. As I said, WSUS server is in the environment, so each environment might have its own WSUS server. So I'm asking the user, say, hey, enter the IP address of the WSUS server that you want to use, and I'm using that, and I'm storing that in a variable called WSUS server. And then here I'm saying that enter the credential for the WSUS server, right? And then of course it's yellow. And then I'm waiting for 2 seconds, and it's going to be a prompt. I'm using the get credential to store the credential in the credential variable here that the user is going to input. And I'm doing that because, again, as I said, this might be run in different environment. Also, I didn't want to hard code the password into the script itself. So get credential, we'll store that credential in the credential variable, and once you close PowerShell, that gets thrown away. I guess thrown away is not the right word, but yeah, it's gone. So you don't have to hard code it in, and they're gonna come into play in a couple of minutes. Same thing here. He's saying that, hey, make sure you use some sort of validation if you're asking for user input. So now next, after I've gotten this information here, I'm trying to start a new session to connect to the WSUS server. So basically what I'm doing is that I'm using a variable called session, and in that variable, I'm starting a new session. I'm using computer name, and I'm using the variable called WSUS server, which is the WSUS server here that the user input, which is the IP address of the WSUS server. And then I'm using credential variable, this guy right here, and that will be the credential that the user input into the computer to be used as credential for the WSUS server. It's very important that each computer or the computer is in a trusted list, because if you try to start a new session wherein the computer is not in the trusted list, I'll put a link or I'll put a note in the description box below of how to do that. If you do not do that, you're going to receive an error that says that you cannot start a new session with the WSUS server, especially if you use an IP address, because that computer is not on the trusted list. So make sure you do that. So now that that's done, basically I'm going to invoke this session, the session that we have stored in this variable, and you can see the variables right here. And then I'm going to ask the user to enter the group that they want to target on the WSUS server, right? So first I created a session, right? And then instead of, the other way that you can do this is where you can install the WSUS module, and then you'll be able to call it directly for whatever computer that you're running on, right? Without necessarily having to go through all of this. But I just figure, again, I'm going to be running this in different environment. Why not just make it this way? Of course, there are better ways to do this as well. And as I get more and more into scripting, I'll look back at this and be like, that was horrible. But who knows? I just figured this shiny object syndrome, right? I figured I'd try this right here. So yeah, so I created a new session, store that in the variable, and then I'm invoking that session right here. And then once that session has been invoked, I'm saying to the user, please input the group that you want to target. The way WSUS server is set up in our environment is that it uses group to target specific computers on the domain. So I'm asking the user, like, hey, enter the group that you want to target on the WSUS server. So basically I'm saying that what group do you want to grab the list of computers from? Right, so that's basically what I'm doing, and I'm storing that into a variable called WSUS group. Right, so once that's done, again, he said the same thing here. If you're asking a user for input, make sure you set up a way to validate that input. Right, so once that's done, I'm using the invoke command again to kind of get into this session. Again, the session is this guy right here. Once you start a new session, that session is run on the background, right, and then you can call that session whenever you want. So to reference back, I started this new session here and I started this variable. So I'm just calling it down the line as I need it. So same thing here. I'm invoking the session, I'm calling the session, and then after I call the session, right, I'm running a command against that session. Because if I just run this command, same concept here, if I just run this command on the computer that I'm running it on, which is the domain controller, it's not gonna work, because the domain controller is gonna be like, well, you don't have the WSUS module installed, and I don't know what you're trying to ask me to do. What is WSUS group? Like, I mean, what is let's go down here. What is get dash WSUS computer? I don't know what that is. I don't have the module for that. PowerShell is gonna be like, I don't have the module for that. So what are you trying to ask me for? And also, if I run this against the computer, the local computer, instead of invoking the session first before running it, then once I do that and I store the group that I want here, once I come here, you're not going to be able to see it, because that variable is stored on the local computer, not on the WSUS computer. So that's why, I hope this makes sense. That's why I'm invoking the session first. And then once I invoke the session, I'm running against that session. And then that variable is stored on the WSUS server. Right? And then now I'm invoking that session again. And then in that session, I'm saying that, hey, please grab the list, and I'm calling it WSUS list. That's what I'm calling the variable. Right, and I'm saying that please grab the list of computers from this target group, which is the group that I specify here. Again, not to be redundant, if I was to run this without invoking the session, then once I run this here, the computer is going to be like, I don't know what this variable is. There's no variable called this, because on this session or on the WSUS computer, that variable doesn't exist. That's why I'm running this variable against the session first before doing this part right here. I hope that makes sense. I hope it makes some sense. So basically, I'm saying that store a new variable, call it the WSUS list, get the WSUS computer and the computer target group, and the group that I'm using is the group that was stored in here that the user specify up here. And I'm using the dash full domain name because I want the domain name, the full the FQDN of the computer. So instead of saying, like, if a computer is test, instead of saying just test, it's test the Koroma tech.local, that kind of thing, right? So it's giving me the FQDN. So that's why I add this here, right? Because it's easier to compare the two when everything is FQDN. You're going to see that somewhat kind of go down the line. So once I do that, now I'm going to grab, now I got the list from the WSUS server, right? And that's all set, right? But remember that this list is still stored on the WSUS server because we ran this against the WSUS server. So now I'm going to grab the list of computer from the ADOU, right? So basically what I'm doing here, I'm saving that in a variable. I'm saying get AD computer, filter, search base, OU, Windows, OU, server, DC. This is where this guy comes in. I'm using the domain that the user specify in the beginning, and then I'm using the TLD that the user specify in the beginning. Now, all of the computers, this might need to change depending on your environment. It might be that it's in a different OU, so you might need to make that adjustment, or you can just add another variable that says, hey, specify the OU that the user is in, and then you just call that variable down here. That's what I should have done actually. See what I mean? Like, you think about changes all the time as you go along. And so you can do something very similar as I do here. Say specify what OU you want to use, and so on and so forth, and then just add those in there and then call them down here. And then of course, I'm using the FQDN because I'm going to be comparing this too. Right. Again, I'm not invoking anything here because this is being run on the local computer itself, which is the domain controller. Now, if you're running on a WSUS server, then you don't necessarily need to invoke anything, right? Because then you might need to, the reverse might need to happen, right? You might need to do it for the AD computer. You might need to invoke a session for the AD computer if you're running it from the WSUS server, or you might just need to install the Active Directory module and be able to just grab things, right? Okay. So now what we're doing is we're creating another variable called final list. So we are comparing the list of the list from the WSUS server and the Active Directory that we've grabbed, list of computer from WSUS server and Active Directory we've grabbed. We're basically just comparing the two, right? So we're saying compare object difference and invoke command. Again, because this list is on that other computer, I need to invoke the session to be able to grab it from that computer. So I grab the list, I invoke the command, I grab the list from that computer, and I'm using the AD list, which was created here as a reference. And I'm saying use input object. Input object is just basically the fully qualified domain name. So it's basically the name of the computer. That's what the table is called. So I'm saying just only give me the input object, which is the FQDN. So then I'm creating a new list called final list. So the final list has been created. Now I have the difference between this guy and this guy. So whatever is in AD that is not in WSUS is going to be stored in here. So once that's done, now I'm going to ping each computer. So basically what I'm doing here is not to waste my time. So I'm going through each computer and I'm going to ping each computer in the final list. And basically what I'm saying is that it's like for each computer in the final list, run a ping test. If you notice, the ping test is a variable here. First of all, I kind of stored that in a variable. I said test connection, computer name, comp, and then the count is 1. Right, that's what the variable is, and I'm calling it down here. So for if ping test, so if the test is successful, store that in a variable called online. So you store that in a different container called online, right? So online plus equals to at computer name. So it's storing that in a variable called online, right? The computer name. Else, if it's not, store that in a variable called offline, right? So basically that's what this guy is doing right here. Again, there's so many other ways that you can do this, and again, as I get better, I'm going to try to re-edit a lot of things. You're going to see that in a lot of the script. So basically I'm pinging each computer to make sure the computer is online. If the computer is online, storing that in a variable that's called online. If it's offline, storing in a variable that's called offline. So once that's done, I'm going to check each computer in the online list, right? And I'm going to invoke the command on each of this computer, because remember, these are different computers. They are not the local computer, obviously, so I need to invoke a command to be able to reach those computers. And then I'm going to run a script against that. So the script is basically going to check to make sure that this is the key that we need to delete. So we're going to check and make sure that the key is there. Of course, error action is silent, so you don't necessarily see anything on the screen. Maybe we should change that so you can see if something happened. If you're troubleshooting and it's not working, you might need to get rid of this to be able to see what's going on. And then from there, if it exists, I'm going to remove it. So if the key exists, I'm going to go ahead and remove that key that I need to remove to help the stuff re-index. And then after that is done, it's going to go through each of the computers and do that. After that is done, it's basically forcing, now it's going to force the computer to re-register into WSUS. So again, for each computer in the online list, I can add another step here that says something in the line of like each of the computers that are deleted, or each of the computer that had their key deleted and recreated, create a new list and then run this command again, that list. But as I said, I'm just actually thinking about that now as I go along. This is so many things that you can add to it. So for those of you guys that are really, really good at it, you can always add to it as well. I'm just starting to really get into it, and I'm starting to create these things. So for each computer is online, you're going to go ahead and run this command. So this is the command that we saw earlier on the guy's blog that worked pretty well in terms of kind of like forcing Windows to queue up its latest update. And then after doing that, putting the computer to sleep for like 5 seconds, and then doing the restart service that WSUS servers. WServe. So basically, I'm restarting the Windows service here after doing this command, which I don't think is really necessary, but I'm doing it anyways. And then I'm using the WSUS command to kind of re-authenticate the server itself, reforce the client to re-register to the WSUS server, and I'm running all of the regular WSUS server command here, right? And then once that's done, the script is gonna print out two lists. The first one is gonna print out all of the ones that are online that were able to get reached and the stuff were deleted. I can add another kind of validation here as well to make sure that this particular stuff where this get run gets added here instead of just an online variable. And then of course, I figured it's not a lot of computers, so I'm able to go through it and just kind of see them in WSUS, and if I don't see them, I can just go from there. That's why I didn't want to kind of add more to the script. And then of course it's going to print out, say, offline if the computers are offline, and I can go in and check the computers that are offline. That is pretty much it for the script. It's a growing script, it's a living script. I'm going to be editing more of it. I'm going to be adding more to it. There's already changes that I want to make when I was going through it right now. Again, I'm somewhat new to PowerShell scripting, so I'm trying to get better as well. But this is the script. This is the script that's going to allow you to force WSUS to re-index the computers that are not being indexed on your network. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you have enjoyed the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. As I said, I'm really getting into PowerShell, so I'm going to be creating similar videos, but not only for PowerShell, similar videos where I run to real life situation and how I solve that that problem or that situation that I ran into. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on your notification, and ask me any question that you want in the comment box below. The script is going to be on my website, so you're welcome to go there as well if you want to contribute to it, if you want to do anything to it, if you have questions about it, you can go there as well and ask me the question or contribute to it if you want to. And thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next one, and as always, do not forget to stay geeking. Peace.